is a topic on IAEI News Live titled Kitchens. We're going to continue from our discussion from last week. We're going to be talking kitchens this week here live on IAEI News Live. Grab a cup of coffee, get ready, and let's get started. All right, we got Brian Bowman in the house. Welcome, Brian. We've got Felix Sandoval, David Engelhart. Good afternoon to you today. And you have 2 minutes after. I know, I'm sorry. I got tied up. I was trying to finish my coffee and all that jazz. So I don't have to yell because I have a microphone. So I am good. We've had our audio. My AV people were here. They got the cameras set up. We got the lighting tuned just right. I think they did a good job. So anyway, Brian Bowman, I was with Brian in St. Louis, Missouri. We did a 2023 code change session. And Brian, I believe you probably should be out at the Western. No, you're not. That's not your territory. That is Northwest, Southwest, IAEI. If you guys and gals probably shouldn't be watching this because you should be in your educational sessions. This is Tuesday, so you guys and gals out there in the Northwest Southwest section meeting of the IAEI, welcome, and hopefully you're having a great program out there. Keep in mind, everybody, here in West by God, Virginia, we're going to have a Western section, and we are going to have a blast. So Steve, this is my kitchen. I am in my kitchen because I said, you know, after I did the garage session last week, I thought I should have done it from my garage because it was such a great session. We're going to blow the chats up on this, and we're going to talk NEC code requirements, and we're going to be using, I have the 2020 code book. So remember the 2020 code book, 2023, geez, oh man. I do have the 2020, I have a 2023 code book. And just in case you guys and gals get crazy out there, I've got the 2017 book and I've got my 2020 code book. Yes, Brian, it's a mess, but I do have the rest of the cover. It's a bookmark. All right, so I got the 2020, I have the 2017. We're gonna set these, I don't know, we'll set these over there. We've got the 2023 code book. Remember, if you can still get the 2023 analysis of changes, don't forget the analysis of changes. Also, from IAEI, they have the 1 and 2, this is the 1 and 2 family dwelling electrical systems. This is an older book. This is a 2017 NEC and the 2018 IRC from ICC. Jeez, oh man. The NEC with the IRC from the ICC. And don't forget NFPA. So in any case, a reason I grabbed this off my bookshelf is because I just wanted you to know these books are still great. No matter what edition of the code you're on, especially if you're dealing with existing dwelling units that might have been inspected to older editions of the National Electrical Code, fill your libraries with great reference materials that take you back in time. And then I have also, which is currently, I believe, under revision, but you have the source grounding and bonding, always great. This is the 13th edition based on the 17 code. There are later editions, but I just brought this up to tell you, look, this material, no matter how old it is, it's great to have it in your library. Please don't forget it. So all of these references. David Castro from Costa Rica. Hey, David, I'm going to be in Costa Rica in a couple weeks, brother. I'm going to be in San Jose for a Canina meeting. So look me up, brother. Michael Hofkin in the house. Welcome, Michael. We are in my kitchen today. we're going to be talking kitchen circuits. I want to talk about microwaves. The microwave that I have right here is the receptacle for it is accessible through this cabinet behind my pie dishes and my bread dishes. See, we got great bread, I don't know what they call those, Pyrex or whatever. So anyway, the receptacle for this machine is up there. I have a cooktop. There's a receptacle underneath in the cabinet for the igniters. This is a gas cooktop for the igniters. We've got refrigeration. This is a brand new refrigerator. The other refrigerator, what happened? Something happened to the other refrigerator. I can't remember. These are brand new cook ovens. I got a story about that one you'll hear during this session, but these are brand new. Did not have to buy them after all. These are brand new. So brand spanking new, did not have to buy them. And I'll tell you the story on what happened there because it's a good electrical story. Okay, so first things first. David Castro, Michael Hofkin, Robert from Omaha, you're the man. Did you get my earlier message about definitions of a kitchen with the salsa question? No, I didn't. I'll have to, I think I remember seeing a text. Hold on. Robert, there's your text. All right, just re-listen to your YouTube with Scott Brady, and there's no definition in Chapter 3 of equipment. That was the 70B discussion. Thank you for your great engagement. I don't see your text on, I don't see your text, Robert. That's right, Brian, it did. It went out at the Rocky Mountain. That's right. That's right. Now I remember it. Yeah, that's what it was. I couldn't remember the deal on that one. I'll tell you the story. Okay, so here's the story on the ovens. I was downstairs doing my live streams. I'm in my office downstairs, my studio, and all of a sudden I had a couple breakers trip. I reset the breakers, looked on the circuit, couldn't find anything that was wrong. I reset one, it held, reset the other, it held. They're GFCI protected. All of those breakers down there and this kitchen is AFCI, GFCI protected. All the circuits in this house. So in any case, my wife told me that the double ovens weren't working. So I'm thinking, well, hey, they're all electronic. They were old. They were old appliances. So she went out and got what she wanted. Had them delivered, they installed them, and the guy called me upstairs because I was downstairs when he was setting it all up, and he says, hey, you got a problem on your circuit. We're getting lights, but we're not getting the coils to heat up. He goes, nothing's working in the oven other than the LEDs. So I went downstairs, I'm like, well, I don't know. He said, probably the ovens in the garage are probably good. So went downstairs, shut the main off, took the cover off. I'm going to replace the 2-pole breaker, thinking it's got to be the 2-pole breaker. And when I grabbed the conductors for the 2-pole breaker, they just came out. The lugs were tightened down, but both conductors, and it's been that way for a long time, both conductors were just setting on front of the lugs. And you are watching this, you know exactly what that means. That means I could have had an electrical fire. There was a 2-pole standard molded case circuit breaker, not AFCI or GFCI protected. So we ended up rewiring that. We didn't throw the other ovens away. We gave those to Goodwill because those were very good ovens. And I think we liked those better than these. But in any case, all right, so first message of the day is make sure when you're wiring up equipment that your conductors are under the lugs. Pull them, torque them down correctly, follow the torque instructions, and all that jazz. All right, so what I wanted to cover was, let me go to recent, pinned, recent, 1 and 2 family, NFPA 70B, IAEI News Live, panel boards, Let's try, here we go. All right, so the first, I can't do that. Here's the first thing that we're going to cover is the definitions. So we're going to run over to Article 100. We're going to take a look, grab your, I'm going to use the 2023 code book, and we're going to go to Article 100, and we're going to look at what is the definition of a kitchen. All right, a kitchen, H-I-J-K-L-L-I-K, kitchen, very simple. It says an area with a sink and permanent provisions for food preparation and cooking. So an area with a sink, I have a sink right here. You probably can't see it. There we go. I have a sink right here. So there's my sink and my books. I have my sink. Permanent provisions for cooking, I have a cooktop. So I have permanent provisions for cooking. Now, here's the question. If I have a microwave, I want your opinion on this. And I've heard people go both sides. I have a microwave. Let's say that I did not have a cooktop right here. Let's say I only had a microwave. It was permanently mounted, but it was cord and plug connected. So it's fixed in place. I use it for cooking. Would you say that if I had a sink and a microwave like this without a cooktop, would that meet the definition of cooking? Bring it up. I want to see it in the chats. All right, so permanent provisions for cooking, an area with permanent provisions for food preparation and cooking. Food prep. I mean, this is all food prep. Countertop space is food prep. So I have food prep. I've got a peninsula, a relatively small peninsula. I should have grabbed my ruler, but I didn't. Grab a cup of coffee. I'm not seeing any chats. Would you say that is permanent provisions for cooking? I need to know. Microwave mounted to the wall, cord and plug connected. Check your code books. I've got food preparation all around here. I've got a sink. I got the fixins for a kitchen. All right. In Wisconsin, a microwave is not permanent cooking, but a slide-in freestanding range is. Okay, so to your point. So here's the thing. I would say yes, you can cook in a microwave. Felix, I would agree with you, Felix. I think, in my opinion, I've got two items that I can do cooking in. This one's permanent. Now, I could argue that if it wasn't permanently mounted and it was setting on the counter, I wouldn't be, if I was inspecting a home, you probably wouldn't expect that there would be a microwave sitting on the counter because nobody's moved in yet, right? You did rough in, you went through the everything. So if you didn't have a cooktop like this that was in place, I could argue that this may not meet the definition of a kitchen. If I didn't have this and I didn't have this, and I only had a sink and provisions for cooking, then it would not be a kitchen. But the moment, in my opinion, remember what comes out of there started up here, but it comes from the heart. If I can just give you my opinion, but the AHJ is the final rule, and the AHJ in your jurisdiction, right? So I plead the fifth, David Engelhardt. You plead the fifth. So Steve Froming says, Wisconsin, a microwave is not permanent cooking, but a slide-in freestanding range is. So in Wisconsin, apparently Steve's saying, look, if my countertop stopped here and it stopped there and I had provisions for cooking, it could be gas, doesn't have to be electric. It can be gas, it could be propane, natural gas, propane, or electric. If I had the spot for it, where it was going to slide in, Steve Froming says that would be a cooking in his state, but not a microwave. So if I had a cutout, like I have here, I've got a cutout for a microwave. Even though I had this cutout for a permanently mounted microwave, this would not be provisions for cooking in Wisconsin. If the microwave is permanently mounted, then I think it is permanent means of cooking. Michael, you and I are in the same ballpark, but as you can see, depends on the jurisdiction. Okay, so now we know what a kitchen is. So the next area of confusion we need to find out branch circuits. What branch circuits are required for the kitchen area? So if I go to 210, we know 210 is branch circuits. 210 is branch circuits, and it covers branch circuits not over 1,000 volts. I don't know about you, but I don't know too many kitchens that are over 1,000 volts AC, 1,500 volts DC. Maybe Michael Hofkin's kitchen, but not Tom's kitchen. So we know we're in 210, at least in this house we are. And I believe branch circuits required is 210.11. Yes, there it is. 210.11 on the bottom of page 81 of the 2023 code book. Steve Froming says, a rec room with a bar and sink and a microwave is not a kitchen. A bar, a rec room with a bar and sink and a microwave is not a kitchen. I would agree with you. Like I have down in my basement. I should have done it from down there too. But in my basement, I have a microwave, but it's one that I just plug in and put on a countertop. It has a sink and it has provisions for cooking, or for food preparation. But it's not considered a kitchen because I don't have permanent provisions for cooking. But if I had a mounted microwave that had a cutout like this, one could make that argument that it's a kitchen downstairs. Robert from Omaha says, what's the difference between a microwave on the counter for plugged into a dedicated receptacle for that microwave and a range cord plug connected on the floor? Look at the definition of cooking. Oh, Renee Graves, cooking unit, page 34. Page 34, you are awesome. Look at that. Page 34, 33, 34, cooking. A counter-mounted cooking unit. Renee Graves. Whoa. Hold on. Renee Graves. All right, cooking unit. Oh, you are awesome. A cooking appliance designed for mounting in or on a counter and consisting of one or more heating elements, internal wiring, and built-in or mountable controls. A cooking appliance, so this is a cooking unit, counter-mounted. A counter-mounted cooking unit. So look back at definition of a kitchen. Definition of a kitchen. Chicken. Definition of a chicken. HIJK. An area with a sink and permanent provisions for food prep and cooking. But it doesn't say, it says permanent provisions for cooking. So a cooking unit, it says a counter-mounted cooking unit. A cooking appliance designed for mounting in or on a counter and consisting of one or more heating elements, internal wiring, and built-in or mountable controls. It doesn't say the word permanent or temporary. It does have the word cooking. So man, Renee, you know how to throw a wrench into things. My wife wants a 1,000 volt cooktop. She said she'll have dinner ready in 27 seconds. That's true. That is so true, Michael. Oh my God, those receptacles are permanent provisions for cooking or food prep. What about commercial salsa factory? Cooking salsa and preparing for packaging is the kitchen requiring GFCI rules even for 3-phase. Yes, it's a kitchen. So we'll get into the GFCI requirements for 210.8b. That's other than dwelling unit. Good question though, good question. So cooking unit, page 34, I think Renee, you have a very good point that this would be a cooking unit. And since it is a cooking and it's permanent provisions, I'd argue, man, I would take that one to the bank. I'm sorry, I would. I would take that one to the bank. All right. Okay, so kitchen, don't forget cooking unit, very good. I wish I had a highlighter because that's a good one. Cooking unit. All right, so let's go back to branch circuits. Branch circuits require 210.11. Branch circuits for lighting and for appliances, including motor-operated appliances, shall be provided to supply the loads calculated in accordance with 220.10. Well, we didn't get to, wait till we get to load calculations, appliances. The number of branch circuits, they talk about a minimum number of branch circuits. And then they have load evenly proportioned, and then C is dwelling units. So 210.11C, dwelling units, small appliance branch circuits, in addition to the number of branch circuits required by other parts of this section. So that would be section 210.11. 210.11A talks about the number of branch circuits that you calculate for a dwelling unit. The minimum number of branch circuits shall be determined from the total calculated load and the size on the rating of the circuits used in all installations. The number of circuits shall be sufficient to supply the load served. In no case shall the load on any circuit exceed the maximum number in 210.11. You have to have them evenly proportioned. And then in addition to the number of branch circuits required by other parts of this section, you have to have 2 or more 20 ampere small appliance branch circuits for all of the receptacle outlets specified by 210.52b. Now we go to 210.52. 210.52, not 220.52. 210.52 is on page 87. B is the small appliance branch circuits. So the receptacle outlets served in the kitchen. I keep wanting to say chicken. You know what it is? I think it's all the chickens and the roosters that are in this thing. I want to say chicken, but it's the kitchen. In the kitchen, pantry, breakfast room, dining room, or similar area of a dwelling unit. My dining room is back down there. The 2 or more 20 amp small appliance branch circuits required shall have all wall and floor receptacle outlets covered by 210.52a, all countertop outlets covered by 210.52c, and receptacle outlets for refrigeration equipment. So kitchen receptacle requirements, receptacles installed in the kitchen to serve countertop. This is 210.52b3. Bingo. Receptacles installed in a kitchen to serve countertop surfaces shall be supplied by not fewer than 2 small appliance branch circuits. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, and I've got one over here for the coffee pot. Coffee is very important. So coffee pot's over there. So those are the receptacles in here, five receptacle outlets. I do not have a receptacle outlet on my peninsula. We will talk about that in a little bit. But there is no receptacle outlet on the face of this island. There are no receptacle outlets on the face of the island on this side either. And I have a receptacle outlet for the microwave, which is behind this counter. I have a receptacle outlet for the refrigerator, which is behind the refrigerator, obviously. And that's all of the receptacle outlets in the kitchen. So I need to supply 2 20 amp branch circuits. So here was a comment that came up, which I think we're going to see a public input on. There's no exception. If I had a small kitchen and I had 1 receptacle, let's talk about that, my little wet bar downstairs, or like my wife calls it, a kitchenette. So in my basement, I have just a countertop, a small bar sink, and a receptacle, 1 receptacle. If I had a built-in, let's say I had a built-in microwave, and you were of the opinion that built-in permanent provisions for cooking, and now that's a small kitchen, I only have 1 receptacle in my kitchen. But 210.52 tells me, 210.11 tells me, 210.11 tells me I need to have 2 20 amp branch circuits feeding that. I would have to have a 20 amp branch circuit feeding the top of the receptacle, if I put a duplex in, and a 20 amp branch circuit feeding the bottom of the receptacle. So 1/2 of that duplex receptacle would have to be fed from 1 20 amp branch circuit. Isn't it? It seems like it's an overkill, but there's no exceptions in the branch circuits. 210.11 says In addition to the number of branch circuits required by other parts of this section, 2 or more 20 ampere small appliance branch circuits shall be provided for all receptacle outlets specified by 21052B. And 21052B doesn't talk about a small kitchen where you only have one receptacle outlet. You have to have 2. Hold on. What do you guys think? 210.52, dwelling unit, small appliance. In the kitchen, I'm going to remove all the other stuff. The 2 or more 20 ampere small appliance branch circuits required shall serve all wall and floor receptacle outlets covered by 21052A. General provisions. In every kitchen of dwelling units, receptacle outlets shall be installed in accordance with the general provisions in A1 through A4. A1, receptacles shall be installed such as no point measurable horizontal along the floor line of any wall space is more than 6 foot. Wall space, there's floor receptacles, there's countertops. Receptacles installed for countertop and similar work surfaces as specified in C shall not be considered as the receptacle outlets required by A. So that means I can't have a receptacle outlet that's serving a countertop double as my receptacle requirement for wall space. But there's no provisions in here that says if I only have one receptacle outlet in my kitchen that I don't have to pull 2 branch circuits. What do you think? What if you had a kitchen that only had one receptacle outlet? Can you get away with only putting one receptacle in a kitchen and one branch circuit? Or would you have to pull 2 branch circuits regardless of how small the kitchen is? What is your opinion on that one? I want to know. Inquiring minds want to know. And it says in countertops and work surfaces. Now I'm on 21052C, in kitchen, pantries, breakfast rooms, wall spaces, islands and peninsulas, receptacle outlet location. Receptacle outlets shall be located. Receptacle outlets shall be installed so that no point along the wall. Renee, your house was built before the code changed. It did. It was. Well, here's the other issue, Renee. Here in Weirton, West by God, Virginia, they only inspect the service. So they don't come in the house. They would have come into this house to go to the basement to inspect the service panel board, which is downstairs, the meter, which is outside, the conductors that come in the home, but they do not inspect unless you ask them. They're not required to inspect inside the house. So my gut's telling me, and based upon what I see, there are some areas that they went way overboard, and some areas where they didn't do what they should have done. But in any case, so I don't see any provision in here that would let me, I always have to have 2 branch circuits going to a kitchen, no matter how large or small it is. All right? Okay, so 21052. So I'm in 21052. I need 2 small appliance branch circuits. I have to have the wall space. I have to have the countertops. Let's talk about countertops. Islands and peninsulas. This has a peninsula. So if you were on an earlier edition, let me just remind you, before I get to there, let me just remind you, IAEI, if you go to, I'm going to put it somewhere. If you go to www.youtube.com/IAEI International, all one word, IAEI, INTERNATIONAL, IAEI International. Get out to that YouTube channel. I go live on that YouTube channel every Tuesday at 12 o'clock, and if I'm not live, it's Memorex. No, if I'm not live, then I will have recorded a session. There's a lot going on out on IAEI's YouTube channel. Please subscribe to it. If you're watching on LinkedIn or on Facebook or other forums, get out to the YouTube site, subscribe to it, hit the thumbs up, and if you have to hit the thumbs down, that's perfectly fine, but you have to hit it twice. It doesn't work. I don't know what it is with videos, but if you have to hit the thumbs down, you have to hit it twice. Thumbs up just once. But thumbs down always twice. All right, so it's just the way YouTube works. So anyway, get out there and subscribe to the YouTube channel, please. All right, so we've got the branch circuits required, islands and peninsulas. We're going to move, we know we have to have 2 in here. Now I'm going to go to islands and peninsulas. So here's the deal on islands and peninsulas. When we were in the process of developing the 2023 language, remember the 2020 language. Well, what did we do in 2020? And you know what? Let's look at 2017. So if you go to 21052, oh, this is my signed code book. Wow. 21052. 210. This is a special code book for me because it was my first panel, code making panel. And I told everybody on that panel, I will do everything I can to increase safety in the electrical industry. And I am trying to do exactly that. 21052, peninsulas and islands. 21052C, was it C3? Peninsula, and then islands. So this is a peninsula. In the 17 code, at least one receptacle outlet shall be installed at each peninsula countertop, long dimension space. In applying the requirements of 21052, each peninsula countertop long dimension space with a long dimension of 24 inches or greater and a short dimension of 12 inches or greater. A peninsula countertop is measured from the connected perpendicular wall. So what we said was, if you measure from the wall out 24 inches and you're greater than 24 inches on the long dimension, and 12 inches from a short dimension, then you need a receptacle outlet. This would not need a receptacle outlet based on that. So based on this language, this little peninsula, because it's measuring from the wall, now this is 17 code. This house was built in 2005. I don't have the 2005 code. And because it's in West Virginia, it was probably the 2002 code. I'm sure there was a delay. I'm not sure when in the adoption process, but in any case, even based on this, I wouldn't need a receptacle outlet on this peninsula. Islands, at least one receptacle shall be installed at each island countertop space with a long dimension of 24 inches or greater and a short dimension of 12 inches or greater. If it's an island, that doesn't make much sense. Islands are typically rectangular. Oh, I guess it would be. So the rectangular, the long edge, and then you have a short edge. Ah, okay. So the long edge here would be 24 inches. 2 feet, I have a sink. I wouldn't make the 2 feet. Anyways. All right, so that was the 17 code. What did we do in the 2020 code? Because you know what the debate was in the 17 was, what's a connecting edge? What if there wasn't a wall there? Before, it was the connecting edge based upon the 2 counters where they meet and intersect. That's where you began the measurements from. When we did in the 17 code, we said, well, let's just go from the wall because nobody knew about the connecting edge when you had a countertop meeting a peninsula. So then we had to make a change. So what we did in the 2020 code, the gurus of code language that we are on panel 2, in 21052, 21052, sí señor, si es muy loco la cabeza. The islands and peninsulas, we grouped them both into one, instead of having 2 second level subdivisions. Receptacle outlets shall be installed in accordance with, so we said at least one receptacle outlet shall be provided for the first 9 square foot or fraction thereof of a countertop or work surface. A receptacle outlet shall be provided for every additional 18 square foot. So we gave you an equation. So instead of, and then we didn't tell you where to put them, okay? So we gave you an equation, and if you think about this, if you think about this peninsula that I have here, we gave you an equation. You calculate the square footage, you subtract out the sink, and then you measure, let me see, did we say measure from the, I believe we left it out. Yeah, the peninsula countertop shall be measured from the connecting perpendicular wall. So you measure it from here, you come out to here, you calculate your square foot, you subtract out the sink, and then that tells you how many receptacles you need. And then you place them where you want. And I'm telling you that I went down to Texas to do a program, and I think it was Houston area. Or maybe it was Austin. I think it was Austin. Anyway, it was in Texas. And I got cornered by, I'd say about 4 electrical inspectors and 3 contractors were in a room. They drug me in. They said, "You're on panel 2. You created this mess. What's your opinion?" And what they were showing me pictures of was at the end of this island, and even at the end of the peninsula, and even on islands, if they calculated they need 4 receptacle outlets, and it's not 4 receptacles. If it was 4 receptacles, 2 duplexes would suit fine. The language says receptacle outlets. So they had 2 questions. One, they had 4 duplexes on the end of the island or peninsula, right next to each other, 4 of them. And then their debate was, in addition to that, in addition to why wouldn't you put them like 1 over there, 1 there, and 1 here, the other debate was, the first debate was, all 4 of them were in 1 location. And then the second debate, or the second issue was, do you use 1 large gang box, or do you have to use 4 individual boxes? And since it says a receptacle outlet, putting 1 box in would be 1 outlet. Putting 1 large box with 4 duplex receptacles is 1 outlet with 4 duplex receptacles. You would have to have put 4 individual boxes and 4 receptacles, and if you want to slap them right next to each other, you could have. So that created a challenge. So then we said, we knew we were going to get public inputs for the 2023 cycle. Well, when the 2023 cycle rolled along, in our debates and during our debates, Doug Lee from the Consumer Product Safety Commission brought to the attention of the panel the number of individuals who were hurt and injured from pulling grease pots and fry pans and whatnot off of these areas. And so the debates on the task group work was, do we remove and prohibit a receptacle from an island or peninsula? Or do we mandate 1 as a pop-up? And where we ended up was we made them optional in 21052C, C2, it says receptacle outlets, if installed, to serve an island or peninsula countertop or work surface, shall be installed in accordance with 21052C3. If a receptacle outlet is not provided to serve an island or peninsula or countertop or work surface, provisions shall be provided at the island or peninsula for future additions of a receptacle outlet to serve the island. So we said, look, we're not going to mandate it, but if you do put it in, it has to be on the top. And if you don't put 1 in, we want to make sure that in the future, 1 can be added. So we wanted the provisions. Now, what we did there was we said, like in my house here, so my basement does not have a finished ceiling. It has, in fact, underneath this area, there is no ceiling, it's joists. So I could easily, no, this is the finished side. This is so this is the finished side. I have a drop ceiling below this, but I could take the panels and I can easily run a circuit to this. Or I can pull off of one of the circuits. Oh, I also have a receptacle under here. I've got a receptacle under the sink for the garbage disposal. All right, so I have a garbage disposal and I have a receptacle under the sink. I forgot about that one. So in any case, I smashed the thumbs up 3 times. Good job, Willie. Remember, odd, and he smashed that thumbs up 3 times, 9 times, 13 times. Always odd numbers, buddy. Or ones. But thank you, Willie. How does figures on page 88, 21052 C1? How does figures on page 88, 87? Oh, yes. So now what this speaks about, Renee, is where you can and cannot, where you shouldn't place a receptacle. Like I have a corner here. So I have behind this area, you wouldn't want to put a receptacle. So spaces that are exempt from the wall would be this triangular piece behind this sink. So this is like in a corner, so to speak. It's not a corner technically because I don't have a wall coming this way, but you get my point. Anyway, this is determination of area behind a range. But when we were talking about the measurements, you subtract out the sink. So what they don't want is a receptacle right behind the sink. So whether it's on an angle like this is, or if this cooktop was a sink, you could put receptacles on this side, you could put receptacles on that side, but you would not put a receptacle directly behind the sink. And that's what these 2 diagrams are trying to help us understand in determining where you place those receptacles. The required receptacles in 21052C1, receptacle outlets shall be installed so that no point along the wall line is more than 24 inches measured horizontally from the receptacle outlet in that space. The location of the receptacle shall be in accordance with C3, and C3 tells you receptacle outlets shall be located in one or more of the following: on or above, but not above a countertop, not more than 20 inches above, in a countertop using a receptacle, or in a work surface. So we wanted to make sure that you didn't have a receptacle below the countertop, because then what that would do is promote, here we go. That would promote this. This is a mixer. If I would plug it here, it keeps the cord from draping over, but if my receptacle was here, I would plug it in here. Now my cord is draping over. I could easily pull this off. A child could pull it off. I could hook it with my hand or my arm and all that jazz. So that's an important distinction. Could I use the argument that a kitchen fire is a greater hazard? Felix Island, or hold on, I haven't run into a commercial. Oh boy, I gotta go up. How does figure apply? So hopefully that figure helps you understand just about when you should not, where you're not required, where you don't want to put a receptacle. You don't want to put it behind the sink, and they're trying to define that area in that image. You put it on either side, etc., etc., etc. I have run into a commercial kitchen controls that aren't compatible with a Class A device, and the manufacturer says not to install it on a Class A protection. Well, I would say, Willie, to contact 2 people. Contact the GFCI manufacturer and contact the appliance manufacturer and work it out, because the challenge is, if you do not put GFCI and it is required, then if somebody gets electrocuted, that's a challenge. That's all I'll say about that. So compatibility, I'll tell you my Beko, this is a Beko refrigerator. So this is a Beko refrigerator. When I first plugged it in, I did have a compatibility issue with a ground fault circuit interrupter, circuit breaker. I called the manufacturer because I know who they are. They sent me an AFGF, new AFGF design, and the breaker I had in there was very old. But they sent me a later design, and she's working fine. So these devices, these types of appliances are putting leakage currents, higher frequency leakage currents in some cases. And in refrigerators cases, I would say it's a high frequency type of issue where it's traveling back over the equipment grounding conductor, causing a difference of current. And a GFCI is an unforgiving device. If current goes out on the hot and does not come back on the neutral, it assumes it's going somewhere and somewhere bad, and then it opens. That's the way they're designed, regardless. So the what some manufacturers are doing are hugging the shock curve that is published based on Dale Zeal's research. And you can add some delay, but you just can't add a lot of delay, but you can add some delay to ride through some of the temporary ground currents that may flow because of high frequencies. But refrigerator is up and running. Some appliances, like this guy right here, some appliances, a lot of these types of appliances have two prongs. Hot and a neutral. There is no ground prong. So there's no way for current to go back over the equipment grounding conductor. You're not going to have leakage issues and detection and false tripping on leakage currents with appliances like this. 210.8 is not there for the receptacle. It is there for these appliances. All of these items that we plug into a receptacle. So that's that one. This is a KitchenAid heavy duty. This has a ground prong. So I have a hot and a neutral and an equipment grounding conductor. If there's an internal fault, if there's an issue with the appliance, there's definitely not a variable frequency drive in this puppy. But if current comes over the hot and neutral and doesn't all go back over that hot and neutral and comes back over that equipment grounding conductor, guaranteed you will trip a GFCI circuit breaker. That was the only thing I was using this puppy for, so I'm going to put it back. All right, so appliances are there. We need to protect what's on this side of the receptacle from ground faults, whether the GFCI fails or not. Compatibility concerns. Again, I did have my Beko, B-E-K-O refrigerator. I love it. My wife likes it. And but it did give me an issue when I first put it in, changed the GFCI, put a newer device in, and she works fine. All right, have run into commercial kitchen controls on our compatibility. So compatibility could be a concern in the kitchen. These microwaves we've picked up microwaves a lot on GFCIs and AFCIs. AFCI and GFCIs both required in the kitchen. If you look in 210.8 and 210.12, I know we're bouncing around a little bit. How much time we got? I'm at 48 minutes. All right, so 210. I'm not even watching the time. 210.12 in dwelling units, the first one on 210.12b, first item is kitchen. So we've had AFCI requirements in here and GFCI. Okay, so let's talk about, I know we were over in 210.52, we were talking about receptacles required. We were talking about receptacles required on the peninsulas and islands. Hopefully you understand you're not required to put a peninsula receptacle in or an island receptacle. If you do, it's got to be on top. If you don't, you have to be able to add one in the future. So the only challenge there is if you are a slab on grade or whatever, and you don't have a basement, those are where you're going to have to put a box underneath, so with a raceway or something, so that you can add now remember, you don't even have to pull the circuit. If you put a raceway in like a conduit, if you put conduit into a box and you have the ability to pull a wire, you don't necessarily have to even pull a wire. You just have a box in place. Island spinner are optional 22.3, but what about the wiring should be? Oh, Felix, okay, I think I just answered your question. So if you don't, so remember, what does it say? It says If a receptacle outlet is not provided to serve an island, peninsula, or countertop or work surface, provision shall be provided at the island or peninsula for future addition of a receptacle outlet to serve the island or peninsula. So provisions, I would argue, and I think I could win that argument. I don't know. I'd have to wrestle maybe. But I would make my argument to say, look, I have provisions. I have a raceway. Let's say that my basement downstairs is all open. If someone says, hey, if you want to add a receptacle to this island, can I pull a circuit? Daggone, I can. My ceiling is dropped ceiling. I can run a new circuit from the panel board, drill a hole up through the floor, and boom, I can wire this island or peninsula, whatever I'm doing in this, anything in this downstairs. I have complete access from the basement. And then remember, we're inspectors, not expectors. So, could they drywall the ceiling in the future? Sure. Sure they could. Could they fill the entire basement with dirt? Would they? Probably not, but they could fill the entire basement with dirt. Yeah, they could, but they probably wouldn't. Anyway, it appears you could use the argument. So island and peninsula. So I would say you don't necessarily need to pull the wire, Felix. Could I use the argument that a kitchen fire is greater hazard? A kitchen fire is a greater hazard. I'm not sure what you mean. Greater hazard than what? It appears your countertop to the right, where your computer is placed, right here, is greater than 24 inches. How does this not require a receptacle? You're right. I don't know what I was thinking, Renee. You're absolutely right. I do remember saying that. And you're right. It is greater than 24 inches. I was thinking, yeah, you are absolutely right. Measured from the wall, it's greater than 24 inches. It would require a receptacle based on the 17 code language that we were reading earlier. I remember saying no, and did you ever say something and no, that doesn't sound right? Well, that's what I was experiencing. Very good point. Thank you, Renee. It would require a receptacle. Why does that refrigerator need GFCI protection? So, David Engelhardt, in my house, everything gets GFCI. So I go above bare minimum code requirements. So all of my circuits in this house are on GFCI. And the reason I did that was because I don't want anybody to get shocked in my house, period. And this guy, if I'm working on something or I don't know, whatever reason. But in the 2023 code, here's what we did in the 2023 in 210.8. If I was wiring this house to meet the 2023 code, remember in 210.8, we took out, for dwelling units, we took out the reference to any of the ampacity stuff, right? So we don't say 15 and 20 amp circuits. We just said any receptacle in any of these areas need to be GFCI protected. So dwelling units, all 125 volt through 250 volt receptacles installed in the following locations and supplied by a single phase branch circuit rated 150 volts or less to ground shall have ground fault circuit interrupter protection for personnel. Jake is snoring on the couch. So bathrooms, garages, outdoors, crawl spaces, basements, kitchens. Kitchens is number 6. So all of these receptacles that we see here all need GFCI protection. The receptacle for the microwave, which is behind this cabinet, needs to be GFCI protected because that's in the kitchen. The receptacle behind this refrigerator needs to have GFCI because it's in the kitchen. The receptacle, this is hardwired. So there is no receptacle for my ovens, but we'll talk about that in a second. There's a receptacle underneath the sink, back in there somewhere, for this, and I believe there's also a receptacle for my dishwasher. The dishwasher is right underneath my iPad right here. So this, 2 receptacles here, receptacles up here all need to be GFCI protected. The receptacle up here needs GFCI protected. The receptacle that's under this cooktop, I could lift this Viking cooktop and there is a receptacle that's powering the igniter. Which one? This guy. So these igniters, I don't know why this one didn't go. Huh, gotta clean that igniter. So the igniters are electrical, and there's a receptacle that serves those. That's all on an AF, and all of these are on AFGF. What else? I think my refrigerator's on a individual branch circuit. I believe it's on an individual branch circuit. Your question was on 210.8b. So you're saying, Willie, that can you make an argument that a fire hazard is greater than a shock hazard? I don't know why that argument would apply. How does a GFCI cause a fire? I'm not sure I understand that. Putting in a GFCI, your question was, could I use an argument that a kitchen fire is a greater hazard? I'm not sure I get it. So the directly wired cooktop and oven does not need, oh, let's go to the cook. David Engelhardt, you are like my straight man. I know you know this stuff. Thank you. All right, so specific appliances in 210.8d. Now, here's the debate that we had on panel 2. We said, look, it's not the receptacle, it's the appliance, what I'm plugging in, which is the shock hazard. And in 210.8b, other than dwelling units, we made provisions that says if you have permanent provisions for, if you have a fixed or stationary appliance, if the fixed or stationary appliance is within 6 foot of the sink, then it needs to be GFCI protected. It's not driven off of the receptacle. So that's in 210.8b. We couldn't do that in a dwelling unit. So we hit all of the receptacles in a dwelling unit because that picks up the cooktops, which is cord and plug. It would pick up an oven if it was cord and plug, but then we had the debate that when somebody at the tip panel says, I can just see what's gonna happen. People are gonna cut the cords off and they're gonna hardwire it to get around GFCI like they do today in other areas. So we fixed that. 210.8d, specific appliances. GFCI protection shall be provided for the branch circuit or outlet supplying the following appliances rated 150 volts or less to ground and 60 amps or less, single or 3-phase. Automotive, drinking water, high pressure vending machines, sump pumps, dishwashers. So here my dishwasher, if I had it hardwired, it would still need to be GFCI protected. Electric ranges. What's an electric range? Electric range would be your electric range. It would be like if I had the whole unit with the burners on the top, that would be an electric range. Wall-mounted ovens, boom, wall-mounted ovens are right here. So now, based upon the 2023 code, these, even though they're hardwired in place, they would need to be GFCI protected because of 210.8d. So we picked up ovens, we picked up counter-mounted cooking units. So if this was not cord and plug and it was hardwired, and then clothes dryers and then microwaves. So if my microwave was hardwired, I got it covered in 210.8d. If it's cord and plug connected, I have it covered in 210.8a. Same thing with the cooktop. Same thing with the ovens. I don't think I've ever seen a refrigerator hardwired, but refrigerators are not on the list. We got electric ranges, dishwasher, electric range. So all of my appliances I've got covered with GFCIs. All right, so what else? Okay, so we talked about GFCI, AFCI, everything in the kitchen. All right, so 210.12 is your AFCI. We talk about the 2 individual branch circuits. We asked the question on what happens if I only need 1 receptacle. We need 2 branch circuits. So we'd have to put a duplex in, serve one half with one brand circuit, the other half with another brand circuit. GFCI protect all of the circuits in here. Individual, we can pull anything extra. So if my refrigerator, this refrigerator is 120 volts, 60 hertz, and it pulls 2.7 amps at 280 defrost power, 280 watts. So the refrigerator, I could, if I could get away with a 15 amp circuit, I could put it on a 15 amp circuit. I don't have to pull 20. So my point is, the two branch circuits for appliance branch circuits are your two 20 amp branch circuits. They're required to be 20 amps. But if I wanted to pull a 15 amp circuit to a dishwasher, an extra 15 amp circuit to my garbage disposal, if I wanted to put my refrigerator on a 15 amp circuit, or anything else in here that's above and beyond the minimum requirements, then I could do that on a 15 or a 20 amp circuit. Yes, David, 210.8D. This was a captive air control cabinet for, and so I don't think there's an exception in commercial kitchens. Oh, Willie. Okay, so what Willie Snyder was talking about, a captive air control cabinet for ANSEL. I don't know what that means. I'm assuming that if it's fire control or mitigation equipment, do you have an exception for GFCI? We have an exception for fire alarm systems and for security systems. But if it's not a fire alarm system, you're right, it doesn't have an exception. And you know what, Willie? I look forward to your public input. All right. Under the cooktop, GFCI is considered readily accessible. Ooh, okay, now it's readily accessible. Everything here has to be AF and GF. The cooktop has a receptacle, but it doesn't need to be a GFCI receptacle as long as that receptacle is protected by another GFCI device. I don't have any GFCI receptacles in this kitchen. My GFCI is in my breaker, so I have AF, GF downstairs protecting the entire branch circuit. That is an issue. I had one inspector who was inspecting a house I sold from here in West Virginia, and the home inspector said, hey, you don't have any GFCI protection in your kitchen or your bathrooms. And I said, yeah, they're all GFCI protected. It's down on the breaker. And he says, no, it has to be a GFCI receptacle. And I said, no, it don't. As long as it's protected by a GFCI upstream somewhere. And I had him put his tester in. And he was adamant that it had to be a GFCI receptacle. And then we read the book. And then he agreed. It does not have to be a GFCI receptacle. So, Felix, I have a receptacle here, but it's protected upstream. If I didn't do a GFCI in the breaker, I could have fed this off of, well, I can't feed it off of my two branch circuits, because it says in 210.11, in addition to the number of branch circuits, by other parts of this section, 2 or more 20 amp small appliance branch circuits shall be provided for all receptacle outlets specified by 210.52b. And if that's not a receptacle specified by 210.52b, then I can't put that on my branch circuit for my kitchen, right? So I could put a blank face up here and feed GFCI downstream. I could put it in my breaker. I could put if I had two 20 amp circuits in here, and let's say that that one and this one were off of 120 amp, and this and this was off of another 20 amp, I could put the very first receptacle, have a GFCI, and feed the others. So same thing with this one. I just have to make sure that the GFCI is readily accessible, and if I have it in my panel board, it's readily accessible, just because for other reasons. Good question though, Felix. All right, so we have the, oh man, 4 minutes over. Well, I was 4 minutes late. Okay, so I covered I covered 210. We got the branch circuit. We had the receptacles. We talked about the islands. We talked about AFCI. We talked about GFCI. We didn't hit load calculations. But if you look in 220, when you do your load calculations, you're going to be looking like the oven. This oven is 240 volts. Oh boy. 7.1 kilowatts. No, 9.5 kilowatts, 240 volts. 9.5 kilowatt, 3-wire. So I would do my load calculations. You would take this at the voltage it's applied. There were 2 ratings in there. This is a 240 volt circuit. So I would take the 240 volt kilowatts. I would calculate that. We know the refrigerator, we know the dishwasher, we take the nameplate, take your large loads, and if you go back into 220 for appliances, you'll find that, what was the section number? We didn't talk lighting either. Crap. We might have to do this again. Lighting, you need a wall-mounted switch on the entrance. It says an entrance, so I have a wall-mounted switch over there. I have a wall-mounted switch over there, but I don't have one over here. I have a wall-mounted switch here for this light to light this area up to go downstairs, but there's no wall-mounted switch when I come into my kitchen over here. I have 2 on that side, but I'm only required to have it in one entrance for the lights in this area. And if I have a wall-mounted switch, it can't rely solely on exception number 2 to 21052B2. Brian Bowman in the house, 21052B2. 21052B2, exception number 2. Receptacles installed to provide power for supplemental equipment and lighting on gas-fired ranges, ovens, or counter-mounted cooking units shall be permitted to be served by a small appliance branch circuit. Woo, Brian, yeah! So I could take this receptacle, feed it off of my small appliance branch circuit. So the receptacle that's here, that's because it's hidden. It's not anyway. So I could have a GFCI on my. Thank you, Brian. Very good job, Felix. You're the man. So Brian Bowman is reading the book. Gosh, Brian, you and I got to get online and do these things. So yes, so you have the exception. And exception 1 says a receptacle installed solely for the electrical supply to and support of an electric clock in any of the rooms shall be permitted. You have no idea how many clocks we have in this house. None of them work. This one works. All right. And here's my buddy Jake. Anyway, okay, so we talked about AFCI, talked about GFCI, talked about the 2 branch circuits, talked about the appliances, load calculations. The load calculations, you're going to go to 220.11, electric cooking appliance, 210.11C is your reference, 220.14, 220.14B and A, specific appliances or loads, and B is electric dryers and electric cooking appliances in dwellings and household cooking appliances in instructional programs. And then 220.53, your appliance load for dwelling units. This is where you have your clothes dryer, your household electric cooking equipment, boom, fastened in place. And this is fastened in place too. We want to talk about air conditioning. 220.55, electric cooking appliances in dwelling units and household cooking appliances used in instructional programs. 220.56 is your kitchen equipment other than dwelling units. And then we can't forget that if I had in the floor heating, I would go to 422.11 because it goes to 11. And then 424.44, installation of cables in concrete or poured masonry floor. No, 422 is not heat in the floor. 422 is your appliances. 422.11F, electric heating appliances employing resistance type heating elements rated more than 48 amps. And this is your commercial kitchens. That's your Willie Snyders of the world. 424 .44 is your, if you have heating in the floor, in addition to the requirements of 210, ground fault circuit interrupter protection for personnel shall be provided for cables installed in electrically heated floors of bathrooms, kitchens, and in hydro massage bathtub locations. So if you have a heated floor in this basement, in this floor, I have a heated floor here in that area, but it's done by water. So I have a hot water tank that circulates water for the floors for here and for upstairs. 550 mobile homes, manufactured homes, and mobile home parks. This is your 550.12 is your branch circuits for those applications, and 550.13 are the receptacle outlets. So your references for mobile homes, manufactured homes, and mobile home parks. 550.12b is your small appliance branch circuit. D is your general appliance branch circuit. 550.13 receptacle outlets. B, ground fault circuit interrupter protection. D, receptacle outlets required. And G, receptacle outlets not required. So those are your, that's your load calculations, heat in the floor, appliances, and your mobile homes and manufactured homes. All right, Willie Snyder, if the fire control doesn't operate, more people could be harmed. Yeah, Willie, good justification. I think you could probably get an exception. And you know what Jeff Sargent always says, I look forward to your public input. All right. I think we're golden. We've got through an hour. We talked kitchens. We had some good discussion. We had great dialogue in the chat box. I appreciate you dialing in on IAEI News Live today at 12. I enjoyed the discussion. And Michael Hofkin, thank you, sir. And please remember, you can get the analysis of changes from IAEI. That's one book. You can also keep in mind 1 and 2 family dwelling units. We have a complete book and educational program, and there's some online training for that, and grounding and bonding, just 3 important resources available to you from IAEI. If you're not a member, please join. I look forward to being a fellow IAEI member with you. I appreciate you taking the time today, and thank you for coming into my kitchen. And thanks for what you do for the electrical industry and for electrical safety. I will see you next week. I think next week is going to be a recorded session. I will be heading down to Costa Rica. So for my Costa Rican friends, please connect with me. Go out and find my email, and let's have a maybe we can have dinner while I'm down there. I leave Friday morning, so I'll be there Tuesday night, Wednesday, Thursday night. So maybe we can get together. Thank you. Thanks everybody for joining in. Thanks for what you do for the electrical industry and for electrical safety. Stay safe, and please stay healthy. Until next time. Thanks.